Welcome to week 11. Before we start today, you're going to need your handout, and I also need you to go listen to the piece that I linked, either the link right below if you're listening from Blackboard, or I'll put the link in the description if you're listening from YouTube. So listen to the beginning of the string quartet. I'll give you a timestamp too. Starts from the beginning. It's not the whole movement. Listen to that and go through it once just for a passive listen. Some of you might recognize it. I used it for roadmaps last semester and showed a couple videos to you in class a month or two ago. Give it a listen and then go through and listen to it again. I'd like you to mark the cadences. So you have the score, mark the cadences, and then come on back. I'll have the score up and we'll go from there. So the reason I asked you to mark the cadences is you can see pretty quickly that in this selection, we have no authentic cadences in our tonic key, which is A minor. Instead, we have two half cadences and a potential for a third cadence that we'll talk about in a second. When we're talking about augmented sixth chords, and we are still on the augmented sixth chord train for this lecture, we talked about the very first day how they lead us to the dominant and they seem to really give us an extra strong pull towards the 5. You have scale degree 6 and you have sharp 4, and they have that half step outward resolution. So it's a really strong chromatic predominant to lead us to the dominant. So what I'm going to have us do then is see how we get into these half cadences. I'm going to ask you for a couple pieces of kind of Roman numeral analysis in very sort of specific spots. I'm not going to make you analyze the whole thing, but I would like, let's go from here. So this phrase, it starts at the pickup to 7. I would like some Roman numerals there, please. And I would also like Roman numerals from here to the end. So take a second and work through them. There are some chromatic chords. Give yourself the diatonic stuff first, work through the chromatic stuff, and think about where you are in the tonal paradigm. So are you in kind of tonic area, predominant area, dominant area? And that should help you narrow down kind of your options for the chromatic chords. So go ahead and work through those and then come back and we will chat a little bit. I zoomed in a little bit. I hope that'll help you see. So let's talk about this first phrase. Pretty much diatonic, right? Start on tonic, we go to a 5-7. We get this interesting second inversion tonic triad. I just have it labeled as a 1-6-4. It doesn't really fit the bill for a pedal 6-4, but take a look at this opening phrase. And you see that the cello is pretty much in pedal territory as we open the work. And that kind of sense of it just chugging on one pitch follows us into the second phrase. And I think that in a way that kind of creates that sort of unsettling feeling that you get when you first listen to this. I realize this was also in the Avengers. And I guess it's some kind of weird scene where eyeballs get removed or something. I don't know. I don't do eyeballs and I haven't seen the Avengers, but someone will let me know, I'm sure. So if that made you uncomfortable as well, sorry. All right, so tonic and dominant. Make sure you have the right quality for this 2 chord. You guys are getting really, really good at identifying root and quality of harmonies and putting Roman numerals to them. You are not so good at specifying the quality of your 2s and 7s. So specifically in minor keys. So make sure that you have a half diminished 2-4-3 here. And then look at how we morph that diatonic predominant into a chromatic predominant, right? So we've got scale degree 6 here in the cello. We have 4 here in the first violin, and 4 becomes sharp 4. The 4 here also becomes sharp 4. Nobody else has to do anything though, right? So we take that 2 chord, the 2-7, and we just slide and kind of morph it into our French 4/3 that leads us into our dominant. So if you want to go back and listen, this is actually one of the cooler parts of the opening, because you get that chromatic ascent in the first violin. So it really kind of draws us in to what is going to be our half cadence. So if we're talking kind of just harmonically, here's your 2/4/3. 4 is here, and then that becomes this, and that leads us to our 5. So by turning that 4 into sharp 4, it just increases our drive towards the dominant, and it gives a little more kind of reason behind, you know, why is the 2 chord in the second inversion. That gives you a little more impetus behind why it's there. The cello is still going to just kind of stick on one note per measure, and we're going to take that 2/4/3. Its ultimate goal is to become that chromatic predominant that gets us to the 5 chord. So that's our first instance of an augmented sixth in this passage, again driving us towards the dominant. And then let's take a look at the last phrase that I bracketed off here, and then we're going to jump up to the third system. These last 4 measures are like chock full of everything that we've done in the past couple of months. So we start on a 1/6. We get this big old Neapolitan. I'm hoping that as you listen to this, you maybe were able to catch it, but we get a huge Neapolitan. And then that turns into a nice applied dominant. So if you're doing kind of pitch inventory here, you have C sharp in the cello, you've got E in the viola, A in your second violin, and G in your first violin. Gives you a nice 5/6/5. A is the root, so it wants to go to a D chord, which in fact it does, moving to D minor. So nice 5/6/5 4 that goes to 4. I left the next harmony blank because it's kind of fun, so I want to talk about it. It does eventually lead us to 5. So let's take a look at what we definitely have in this harmony. We definitely have scale degree 6, and we definitely have tonic. We know we're going to a 5, so it kind of narrows down our options per se. Now let's look at kind of what we've got going on. The second violin has been this great kind of constant eighth note throughout the entire passage. Not all those eighth notes are chord tones, obviously, and we've seen that. So we've got to decide sort of who is the chord member here. And now for the first time really that we've looked at it, the first violin comes into play as potentially not entirely encapsulating the harmony. So let's take a look at the first violin. If you go just by downbeat on this harmony, you are going to get sacked with something that you probably do not want to or know how to analyze. You've got this, which sounds really cool, but maybe not a harmony that we would see in Schubert as functional, right? So you've got 6 and 1, and then you've got 5 here. So F, A, and E. But I'm going to drag you into beat 2 instead. So this becomes this. And we go back to that D sharp at the end of the measure. So take a second for me and tell me something brilliant about what that harmony would be. How would you label that harmony? I'll play it for you again. And it goes here. So it goes to 5. Look how that sharp 4 moves. Look how 6 moves. So you've got this 3-note harmony that hopefully you were able to deduce as an Italian 6. Now that's fine, and I'm happy to leave it there. But what I also think is kind of fun is let's just look at the second violin. Now let's say that we decided that we wanted the B to come into play as well. So we've still got F, A, and D sharp. What happens if we add the B into it? What harmony did we just get if we add scale degree 2 into that Italian? Now we actually get a little hint of French. Now, since it's fun, we're going to keep going. Let's say instead we want to talk about the C. So you've got F, A, D sharp. You're going to add the C. What does that sound like? And don't tell me it sounds like a 5-7. It does sound like a 5-7, but in this context, what are we getting at? We've just added scale degree 3 in. So now we've got a little bit of German 6-5. So how would you label this measure? I think on my original score, when I first kind of read through this piece, I just have it labeled as international plus 6. So I have something like that. It's all of them, right? We traverse all three. I think that from an oral perspective, you don't really, if anything, you hear it as Italian, right? You don't really hear, oh, it went from Italian to French to German and back. No, most people aren't going to hear it that way, right? What you hear is the essence of this going there. Again, you hear the intensified predominant as moving to the 5. That's the gist of it. That's the fun stuff. Okay, so the last thing I want to do with this is I want to talk about this third system. So I have 2 cadences labeled, right? I have 2 half cadences, but we do get this moment around measure 16, 17, where you might have felt like a cadence happened, but you weren't quite sure sort of what it was. So let's talk. Can you do me a favor? And what I would like from you is root and quality of, I'll mark it in a different color so you can actually see everything. Root and quality of these harmonies, please. So harmonic rhythm is one harmony per bar. So give me root and quality, please, of those, and then come on back. So the 2 measures do repeat, so you only have to do like half the work. But what you should have then is a B7 going to an A minor first inversion triad, and you do that twice. So let's talk about how they're operating, because that's not a harmonic motion that we're expecting, right? So B7, work with me, we're in A minor. It's a dominant quality chord built off of B. So I'm telling you, as always, it's gotta be a 5 somebody, right? So if we see a B7 kind of in the wild, in the context of A minor, how are you going to want to label it? You're likely going to say it's a 5-7 of 5, which you would be correct. B7 in A minor, you're going to assume it's a 5-7 of 5. However, it doesn't go to 5, right? Either time. It goes instead to a 1-6. Now that in and of itself looks like it should be wrong, right? It doesn't look right. It's not what you're expecting. Can we have this kind of hanging Chad applied dominant that just like doesn't do what it's supposed to? Sort of. So let's take a look at the first violin. First violin does what it should, right? You can imagine if this, ooh, sorry. Hope that didn't make anyone motion sick. You can imagine that if this was actually operating kind of the way it should be, and everyone followed the first violin's lead, it would work fine. Now that you know what the piece sounds like, that sounds really hokey and awful. But harmonically, it's what you're expecting it to do, right? The first violin plays along, the viola plays along, everybody else kind of forgets what they're supposed to do. The cello and the second violin decide that they are instead going to go to A's and C's and turn what should have been a very easy tonicization into something that is instead not what you expect. Now let's talk about the cello. Put yourself for a moment into a tonicization to 5, right? So B7, B is acting like scale degree 5, right? If we were in E and that B resolved up to C, what type of cadence would you call that? So if we were in, let's say, E minor, and you had that type of motion in the bass, it would probably sound something like this. I went to C major there. So B7 to C major, how would you classify that cadence? And for those of you who stuck around for the Schumann lecture that I did on that first analysis type, we saw something similar to this. B7 to C major, that is a lot like a deceptive cadence in E minor. So if you look at what the cello is doing, maybe the cello thinks it's a deceptive cadence, and that's what it's doing. Because it moves up by step from this kind of temporary 5 to temporary 6 if we're expecting to tonicize E. So we get deceptive motion in the lowest voice that subverts what would have been a pretty easy way to tonicize 5. And it's kind of funny that repetition of those 2 bars. It's like, we do it the first time, crap, we went to the wrong place. Okay, let's try again. We're gonna do it again. And we still go to the wrong place. And then everyone's just like, all right, fine, we're gonna finish it off and we're gonna get a half cadence elsewhere. And what I think is also interesting is look at, I know when we started doing secondary dominants, the first thing we did was the 5 of 5, right? And all we were looking for back then when life was simpler was just sharp 4. That was the only chromatic pitch we cared about. Where's sharp 4? That's going to tell us what's going on. Now, look at that very first strong half cadence. There we get sharp 4. And then when we come back here, we have that B7 to A minor 6. So there's our kind of failed tonicization to 5. But sharp 4 is still there, right? And then it comes back at the very, very end, again with this kind of international aggressive augmented 6th that brings us one last time to the dominant. So sharp 4 is still there, and it's kind of spinning around through the phrase, but it keeps doing different things and taking slightly different roles. Okay, so that was kind of a crash course of sorts of just kind of getting your feet wet with analysis with augmented 6 chords and applied chords and a Neapolitan. Kind of everything is in this 20-ish measure passage. Grab your homework if you don't have it already. I want to just talk and kind of walk you through the first example of each just to make sure we're super clear on what's going on, and then I'll cut you loose for the day. This homework is a bit of just like a puzzle solver homework. You guys did a ton of part writing in the last homework. So this one is analysis, but it's not in the context of a real life piece. It's more just making you work backwards. So let's walk through the first one together, mostly so that we're all clear on what you have to do. Because some of you are still really, really bad at reading directions. I love you, but you're really bad at reading directions. So let's go through it step by step. So the first thing I ask you to do is identify the key. These are all in minor keys. So you're going to identify the minor key for this particular augmented 6 chord. These are mystery chords. You don't know if they're Italian, French, or German. You have to figure that out, but your first step is to figure out what darn key you're in. Augmented sixth chords. Who's in the bass? What scale degree? Scale degree 6. So take your bass pitch, turn that into 6, and then just find one from there, right? Easy peasy. So let's take this first one then. You've got C in the bass. You're in a minor key. Bunches of ways to do this, but if C is scale degree 6, probably the easiest way to find the key is just go up by major third, right? And that will give you your tonic. That will give you scale degree 1. So C up a major third for scale degree 1 gives you E. You are in the key of E minor. So that's step 1. Step 2, I'm even going to highlight this one. Provide a key signature, please. We had another homework that was similar to this, and a lot of you did beautiful work and gave me not a single key signature. So let's be super clear. I need a key signature. You already told me the key is E minor, so all you have to do is put your little accidentals on the staff. Okay, now let's figure out what augmented sixth chord this is. Tons of ways to go about it. My preferred way is to play it if you can. So if you have access to a keyboard, play it and see who it sounds like. So you can do that. Or you can just go by scale degrees, which is also totally fine. Ideally, they'll give you the same answer. So you've got scale degree 6 in the bass. You have sharp 4 in the tenor. Thus far, we have no interesting information to identify the chord. We have scale degree 1 in the alto. Also tells us nothing because those 3 scale degrees are in every augmented sixth chord, right? So what's the soprano tell us? Scale degree 3. So by checking back on your notes or what have you, that gives us a German augmented sixth chord. You don't have to resolve them. If you just give me the key signature, honestly, I'll be super excited. You don't have to resolve them. Give me a key signature, label the key, tell me what type of augmented sixth chord it is, and that's all. Now, just a note about this, since I gave you no key signatures for a reason, because I didn't want to tell you what key it was in, right? When you go through and put the actual key signature in, you might find that there are pitches in the chord that have like duplicates. So more than likely, this guy has an accidental in the key signature that is replicated in the harmony. I had to tell you all of the pitches precisely, otherwise you wouldn't be able to figure out what chord it is. So it's fine, don't worry about it, proceed as normal, not a big deal. All right, let's go to part 2. This one you do have to do a little bit of resolving. So we're going to go through this step by step one more time. And I gave you a nice little kind of example model here. So you are going to do exactly what I did in this little model, which means the things that I need you to tell me what key it's in and give me a key signature. How are you going to know? You're going to do the same thing you did in the part A above. What you have in front of you is a mystery augmented sixth chord. So the first thing you're going to do is figure out what key you are in by that augmented sixth chord. So if we walk through this first one, then again, augmented sixth chord, scale degree 6 is going to be in our bass. If E flat is scale degree 6, walk your way up to find tonic. That gives you G minor as your key, which means that is going to be, sorry, that's a really sloppy placement of that guy, yikes. Your key signature will be that. And this is what I mean about duplicating. So yes, the E flat and the B flat are written explicitly with accidentals, but that's because I had to tell you precisely what pitches they were. Now that you've got the key signature, you don't have to worry about it. Okay, so that's first step. Second step is labeling the augmented sixth chord. So we did the same thing in part A. So you're going to give me an Aug6 label. Step 3, compose a tonic triad before the augmented sixth chord. Now, yes, there are a plethora of voicings you could have here. Let's be logical though and make it as smooth as possible. And what I mean by that is more than likely your bass is not going to go up to scale degree 6, right? It's probably going to come down for it. So a most logical bass pitch then would probably be there. Where is your sharp 4 likely going to come from? Well, I'll tell you, you don't have a lot of options. It can't come from scale degree 1 because 1 to sharp 4 gives you an augmented fourth. We don't really like those in a linear fashion. How about scale degree 3? Scale degree 3 to sharp 4. What is scale degree 3 in G minor? It's B flat. Sharp 4 is C sharp. Why do I not like that? It's because it's an augmented second linear motion. So we don't like those either. So your only option to proceed sharp 4 is scale degree 5. You have a scale degree 1 in your augmented sixth chord. I would say you just keep it, right? And this one, you even have a 3. So you can keep that too. And then you're going to resolve the augmented sixth chord to the dominant or a cadential dominant if it is a German sixth. You did a bunch of those in your last homework, so I think you'll be okay with that resolution. Don't forget all the stuff you did last week. Don't forget to raise your leading tone in the 5 chord. Don't forget the augmented sixth resolution patterns. Don't forget to go to a cadential dominant if it's a German. But that, I think, should get you pretty set up well for the homework itself. This is, due-ish, as always, on Wednesday. So Wednesday's lecture is going to be analysis-based as well, with a little bit more focus on your final project. And there will be more info on that coming out pretty soon. So take a look and listen through that. But if you've got questions, as always, let me know. And I hope you guys are doing well, and I will see you in a couple of days.